And I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to start out. Okay. Okay, that should work out. What I'm looking at is just myself and the name of the program. Okay. I gave this program through the Clalit Health Fund, and I was using their webinar, so I'm doing it now on my own. I may have some problems. I may have to disappear, but and I've made some changes with the Hebrew into all the English. So let's get started. One of the things I can share at this point in my life is my own involvement with alcohol and drugs, because I'm now clean and serene for 37 years, and on the 10th of this month, I'll have 38 years. And in the beginning, 38 years ago, there was a real stigma. I had to be really careful who I told and what they knew, because when a first treatment center opened in Israel, it was at Kibbutz Beit Oren. And I saw now, I was 2.5 years clean, and I saw an advertisement said mental health professionals, social workers, psychologists, or clean addicts. So I said, hey, I got a job. I went for the interview, and they couldn't believe I was an addict. And they said, please don't tell the patients, which was absurd, but I did do that. After a while, patients got very angry with me because they said, why don't you tell us about yourself? We're asking you questions you're avoiding. So I told them, and I thought my career was going to be over, and it really made me jump into the addiction treatment field. Well, Bet Oren didn't succeed because of the expenses, and it was too expensive for people to pay and cover the expenses at this elite kibbutz. So there was a new program opened up in Nahariya called Yeshua Hayim, and it was in this building here called the Bet Amigo. And also the same thing happened after a year. They couldn't afford to keep the place going. So the kibbutz, Gesher Aziv came to me and said, let's open it to kibbutz. We have hardly any overhead. We have all the buildings. The food is just no problem. So we opened the place at Gesher Aziv in 1992. There were 4 patients. And today they have 72 patients. And they've moved to a program, you can see it in the picture, in a town called Ilibig. It was getting too big for the kibbutz. Too many recovering addicts were getting involved with everything in the kibbutz. They decided to have us move out. In any case, in 2005, in the meantime, I worked in, I'm going to tell you about that, food addiction and gambling addiction. But in the meantime, in 2005, I went to the United States to a program, especially for professionals. And this is very different than my experience. I'd like to do one thing, because I'm concerned that there are people who, because I'm sharing, couldn't get in. But I don't see that being the case. Okay, sorry. I'm going to go back to the sharing and what we're dealing with. Okay. This is very different, because the people in Israel who were addicted in the early 80s and 90s, even in 2000, would go to Europe for treatment because of the stigma. And it was very interesting to see the differences in how professionals dealt with addiction and how people from Israel, usually mostly from the prison system, work with addiction. And I guess I'll get back to that. A woman came to me, and I have permission and everything to show people and talk about them. This is Naomi. She came to me and said, I've tried everything. I'm bulimic. I purge and I eat, and I'm gaining weight and I can't stop. I've taken every kind of diet. I've been to everybody. I'm hearing that it may be an addiction. And I heard you treat addictions. I said to Naomi, I've never worked with a food addict, but if you want to try it, we can try it. We'll just put the same program we use for other addictions into food. And I work with Naomi, and this was the result. You can see the difference. She dropped about 90 kilo. It was put in the Arabic press, but it was also put in every single newspaper, in the Isha, which is the women's Vogue magazine. And we were on, as soon as she got on notice, we were invited to TV. I was on Rivka Mechieli with her and Gabby Gazit. I went on as an expert in addiction, not as a recovering addict. It was still forbidden, in those days. And this was an Hebrew advertisement from the Krayot. They said, Nomi, it said she weighed 130 kilo and she got to 75. And they introduced me as Dr. Arthur Trotzky, a specialist in Hitmakrut, because they didn't want to mention my own personal life. This was just some of the women. By the way, when all this hit the news, the next day I had about 150 women, mostly women. I had 3 men, 150 women contacting me. It got so big that we were in Kiryat Bialik, we opened a place in Haifa, we opened a place in Tel Aviv, and we did workshops at the Dead Sea. Had 150 people right away. And this was one of the people and who lost. I'm just showing you how the results were, just by simply treating it as addiction. You can see how much weight she's lost. Same with this woman. Now, this was a woman who lost a huge amount of weight and then had an operation to remove some of the cellulite, I guess they call it, on the side of her body. So here I am now running a treatment, one of the largest outpatient treatment program for addiction or eating disorders. I was having more people from the hospital. In fact, I had people coming from discharged from hospitals for anorexia were coming to our groups. This was an article written by a fellow from Madrid, Spain. And he was mentioning that people are beginning to see it as addiction, and there's a group called Overeaters Anonymous, or OA. And it's a 12-step program. And then he also wrote about what I did. He said 1994 to 1998 in Israel, we had 409 obese women and 169 with bulimia were treated in small group settings using the Minnesota 12-step model. And there were great results. We had a very large weight, and a lot of women, 71% of the women stopped purging in 6 months. And the mean weight loss was almost 10 kilo. This was the article that was published in the International Journal of Adolescent Medicine and Health. This was in 2002. We're talking about 23 years ago, and I'm dealing with food addiction, okay? Some of the articles on my website, you can just go to publications and click on it to read them. Now, here's the thing about addiction. It goes addiction, interaction, disease. It goes from one thing to the other. It's not about the particular substance or behavior that people are addicted to. It's what's the cause, okay? And when people were treated for overeating by having gastric bypass or these sleeve procedures, they went into alcohol. And the reason they would say, well, we're going to alcohol because the stomach is shorter and therefore absorbs the alcohol. That's not the truth. The truth is that they need something else instead of the food to make themselves feel better, to get to the reward deficiency syndrome. We'll talk about that. I'm going very fast because this was originally a 2-hour program, and I want to get to the important things. So I'm going to skip over some things very quickly. Here's a gentleman came to me in around 2002. He came in, he said to me, a young man, he said, do you keep confidentiality? I said, sure, why do you ask? He said, I'm from a famous family. Big ego, famous family. I said, well, what's the family? He says, Rosenthal. I was hoping it was Begin or Sharon or somebody, Paris, somebody, Rosenthal. I don't know any Rosenthal. I said, well, I know Rosenberg. He was very famous for stealing atomic energy spying in the 1950s and was executed in America. He's getting mad at me. He said, no. I'm Ronnie Rosenthal's brother. I said, I don't know Ronnie Rosenthal. He said, football. Bonnie. He said, no, that's Bonnie Ginsberg. I'm Ronnie Rosenthal. He was on the Israel team, and he had a big gambling problem. After he told me, I said to him, listen, I don't understand who you are because I don't like soccer. I like football, American. If you told me you came from the New York Giants, I'm sure I'd know you. Anyways, his ego was deflated. He started talking to me. We worked it out. He was a tremendous gambler, huge gambler, and he was able to get out of the gambling, called abstinence. And he today is the head of all the government Mifal HaPais treatment programs and the addiction treatment program at Haderach. He's doing real well. He's got 17. He did have a relapse, but he's had 17 years of abstinence from gambling. And it's, by the way, gambling is one of the most destructive. The suicide rate's very, very high among gamblers. Now, we started doing groups. He came to me, he said, we started doing groups. I have to speed up. There was a guy in our group who was 77 years old. He was a gambler. He lost everything. And he was very depressed. I said, and I've been reading in the 1980s that in Chicago, they were doing research on dopamine and gambling. Well, he said, I feel terrible. Look what I've done. I said to him, well, maybe you're not responsible. Maybe it's your brain. Maybe it's your dopamine. And he looks at me and he says, dopamine? I take dopamine. I said, what do you mean? He says, I take levodopa replacement therapy for my Parkinson's disease. Okay, that was interesting. So I didn't make a big deal over it. I started thinking about it. And then 2 weeks later, a guy comes in. He's also a gambler. And he tells me his father has Parkinson's disease. That's number two. A woman comes in, brings in a morbidly obese child, 12 years old. I knew there had to be something genetic. After the meeting, she said to me, did he tell you about his father? I said, he's very embarrassed. She said, no. He says his father has Parkinson's. I said, well, look, I've heard of a couple of cases where it's involved with gambling, but I never heard of it with being with food addiction. And she said, really? His father's father was a gambler and lost everything. And now I see they just come out with some research in 2011 about it being related to Parkinson's disease. Oh, someone else is coming in. Hold on, get them in here. And you can see they're even talking about food addictions also being related to dopamine. So we're talking about, I'll have to get rid of somebody's picture. I'm sorry. Okay, great. So we're starting to see that there's a chemical relationship between the different addictions. Now, I didn't have a chance to change this. It's in Hebrew, as you obviously noticed. It says for step one, tzad, and if the key words are hadenu, we admitted. What did we admit? Chaser onim, powerlessness, a lack of power, powerlessness, and we've lost control of our lives. The reason I did that, because every single one of these 12-step groups, whether it be alcoholics, NA, AA, OA, Gambling Anonymous, they all start with step one. We're powerless, and we cannot stop, and our lives are becoming unmanageable. If your lives are good, you're not going to come in for treatment. You have to be at a point where you admit you can't do anything about it, and you need to realize that you suffered enough. A guy came to me once. His mother brought him in. He was a very successful businessman, about 30 years old, very wealthy, opiate addict, and he had a good business, and he had a lot of money, and he had a lot of heroin. So he said to me, "Well, what should I do, Arthur?" Well, I realized he hadn't suffered, so I said, "That's enough. Let's make it. Stop it. Hey, no more." So he has no respect for me. No respect for me. In any case, I said to him, "What should you do?" I'll tell you. I'm in a session, please. I said, "What should I do?" I said, "What you should do? Go home, use all your heroin, keep using, and when you have lost your business, you have no drugs, and this is what I said in Hebrew, and atabakriz ahushamuta, come to me." I can't tell you that in English because English is not appropriate to use slang words. In Hebrew, we can say whatever we want. Okay. He did come back 3 months later, and he's clean and sober today. Because I had to make it a point. He was not going to stop. Why would he stop? Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit of chemistry real quick to understand it. This, when you touch something, ow, the reaction is immediate. But look what happens. The nerves pick up an impulse. It goes all the way to the spine, up through the thalamus, into the sensory cortex, into the motor cortex, back down to the muscles, and there's a retrievement of the hand. And it's that quick. Now, you know how that's transferred? It's electricity. And you know where that electricity comes from? The electric company. No, I'm just kidding about that. The electricity comes from the nerve cells. This is a nerve cell, very nice model. You'll see my model's not too good by hand, but this is a nerve cell. This is the cell body. If you look at red blood cells, it's just one cell, but the nerves have this long shoot or axon, someone else is trying to come in, okay, has this long sheath of axon, which enables it to transfer messages very quickly. This is images of some nerve cells or neurons. You can see the long cell with the cell body. Now, this is my diagram. What happens is the electricity is caused by stimulation of chemicals in the fatty and sheath of the axon. And you know, if you remember chemistry, there are ions of positive and negative. This is called the NAK pump. Potassium is positive, chlorine is negative, and that's an electric impulse is chemically initiated. Okay? This impulse goes along till it gets to the space between neurons. It's called the synapse. You've heard of that. I'm going to go quickly. It says, no, skip that. It says in Hebrew that the information goes through the nerve in electricity, the tzurat chashmali, but it goes from nerve to nerve chemically. And these are called neurotransmitters or neurochemistry. So it comes down, this nerve releases the neurochemical, this nerve picks it up, and it starts the same process. These are some of the chemicals. Acetylcholine, you've all heard of dopamine, I'm sure. Serotonin, serotonin is about depression. Norepinephrine is concerned with stimulation, running, sports, sex addiction. And there are many more. There are gases, in fact, laughing gas can do quite a number on your dendrites and nerve. In any case, I'm going to skip ahead. They can do today with this positive emission topography, all these different new systems, they're able to see the difference of the brain when you're in control and when you're on cocaine, because they can see how the glucose is responding, and that's how they see the difference. So when you see on the cocaine, there's certainly more areas of glucose being used. This is the brain. This is the last part I want to show before I skip real fast. This is the reward center of the brain, okay? It's called the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens. These are the two areas. Then it goes up to the cortex, where you become aware of things, feelings, senses, and memory. But this is the area, plus this little area called the caudate nucleus. So these three areas make up the reward center of the brain. And here's what happens when cocaine begins in the brain. It stimulates the reward center and then goes a large area here. You see, this is how the reward centers are activated. They come in different parts. This comes into the ventral tegmental area, alcohol comes into the nuclear cortex, but they have to make the chemicals affect the reward center. I will tell you one secret. In all my years of treating addiction, I've never had anybody who was affected to broccoli addiction, not even asparagus addiction, because they do not affect the reward center of the brain. We're talking about things that affect the reward center of the brain. Okay, these are different areas of the brain, and this is opiates. What's interesting is how it doesn't affect coordination. If you see these pictures of people in the United States who are slumped over, they don't fall because the opiates are not affecting their coordination, but it's doing a lot of other things. And this is marijuana, but it affects the different areas of the brain. I'm going to go quickly through that. Now I'm going to get into the food addiction. There was a guy named Mark Gold. He still is named Mark Gold. Mark Gold is a psychiatrist at University of Miami. University of Florida in the medical school. And he was talking about addiction in the 1980s to food. And he was treating cocaine addiction. And I thought that was interesting. And I followed him over the years. I went to a conference, I heard him speak. It was very convincing to me that this is what we're talking about, an addiction. And he worked with a person, Dr. Ashley Gerhardt, who formulated the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And I want to tell you something about that, because I'm going to tell you something that can be very big for some people in Israel here. Again, he writes with another person, Food Addiction, a comprehensive handbook. Here was a food addiction written by many, look like they're mostly Indian researchers about food and addiction. Here's a report. about evidence that food addiction is a valid phenotype of obesity. And also, these are the things that it causes. Neurobiology of food addiction. This was in 2003. These other people were talking about it in the 90s. Some people just don't want to accept that there's a food addiction here, or an eating disorders addiction. Now, this guy named Kenneth Bloom is, if you want to read his work, more power to you. I cannot get through his work. It's like, and I think the brain chemistry today is like looking at the astronomy. You go out, there's a new planet, there's a new moon. And I looked at a neurology book and I got lost in it. I also look at astronomy books, astrology, excuse me. No, astronomy, not astrology, astronomy. So Kenneth Bloom came up with he works on dopamine and glucose, obesity, and he called it the reward deficiency syndrome. Something is lacking in the person's reward system that makes him or her more apt to get into a certain type of behavior or drug. Some people like uppers, some people like downers. I don't know why. You know, when I lecture people, I sometimes say, I tell you, if I drink coffee, I can't sleep. One night I was invited to an Arab family, and they gave me these small cups of black coffee, and I had 3 or 4 of them. At 4 o'clock in the morning at home, I was like shaking. I couldn't sleep. When I drink coffee, I can't go to sleep. But there are people in this world that can drink coffee and go to sleep. And when I'm lecturing to a large crowd, a lot of people are nodding their heads. And I get a great laugh when I say, oh, look, there are a lot of really screwed up people in this audience. The truth is, they're drinking a stimulant and going to sleep. So different chemicals work differently on different people's reward systems. What do we give people, kids especially who are hyperactive? We give them speed. Ritalin is a speed. When we were in college, we used to take Dexedrine, which is a diet drug, Dexedrine to stay up for 3 nights straight to study. That's how we got through our first degrees. But I want to say something about this reward deficiency because I think it's right on. Addiction is a biopsychosocial disease. There are 3 factors, and these 3 factors affect the reward system of the brain. For example, genetics, depression, schizophrenia, alcoholism, obesity. These are genetic predispositions to these. And I'm not sure what the chemistry of the brain is, but you can see there's a genetical input into what determines addiction and which addiction. Biopsycho. Psycho is the family of origin of the significant others in the child's formative years. It's the child within. He or she learns to be loved and encouraged and stroked and hugged. We say hugs, not drugs, or criticized and laughed about and slapped and punished and abused and traumatic. These also affect the brain and the social, the societal. I read the New York Post, and I can't stand it, but the New York Post still today has a picture of like a movie star in a bikini, and it says, so-and-so sizzles in her bikini. Sizzles. Now, we grew up with that stuff. Women look at this as growing up, oh, well, I need to lose, I want to sizzle and attract men, I gotta look like that. And the guys, they also get affected by this. In other words, the society tells us how we're supposed to react when we're angry. In America, you can't get angry. In Israel, you get angry. Older people get angry in Israel. When I went to America in 2005, I got in a lot of trouble. In a hospital I worked at, because I got angry at people and raised my voice. She said, you can't do that, Arthur. You come and tell me I have an issue with Bonnie. But I know I yelled at Bonnie. So what are you talking about? You told me this yesterday and I'm on the treatment team, blah, blah, blah. So you can't do that. So we learn all kinds of things about ourselves, our feelings, our bodies. And that's why I say that food and eating disorders are women's drug because of the society. More so. Also the psych and the bio. But that has a tremendous effect on women. And all the women all the men I had 3 or 4 men. There were some who were obese, but they didn't suffer as much because they were able to do a lot of physical work. We went down to the Dead Sea. These guys are putting the amplifiers and the conga drums on the truck. but the women weren't. They were just heavy set and suffering from it. And the men I had 2 men with eating. One was bulimic, but he also was a gambler and also smoked marijuana. So I'm saying the social factors are very heavy when it comes to food addiction. Now, I wrote an article for Addiction Professional way before this was happening. I think it was in the early 2000s. And what I said, because when I go to an NA meeting, the addicts in Israel say, they call the disease Choser Sipuk Tmidi. And these are people, not educated, most of them, coming from the prisons, coming from serious neighborhoods called branches, tough people, and they call it Choser Sipuk Tmidi. When I was in Ridgeview in Atlanta, I had a group of doctors in recovery. I said, can you guys help me? How would you define the disease in terms of what we experience? See, one guy says, well, it's a perpetual serotonin deficiency. I said, no. Don't talk about the chemicals. What do we feel? And they came up with perpetual dissatisfaction disorder. And the same thing in Hebrew, Choser Sipuk Tmidi, is a perpetual dissatisfaction disorder. And I wrote about that. I wrote, in order to tell people, patients, what the problem is, it's a chemical imbalance. I have to turn this off too. Hold on. Stop video. Okay. And this chemical tendency is the reason we have cross addictions. So I like the idea of persistent dissatisfaction disorder. Eating disorder, this is an article published about eating disorders and overlooked intervention for binge eating disorders. I wrote, this is my article, Treatment of Eating Disorders Addiction. This was back in 2002. We were way ahead. In fact, they had an international conference here on eating disorders, and they didn't accept my presentation on food as addiction, on eating disorders, and it was in English. But I got in there anyways. I gave them an abstract and I made video recordings or something. Now, this is the Yale Food Addiction Scale. And the reason I put this up is because it may be very interesting to someone here. The woman who was the head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse is named Nora Volkow. She's a neurologist, and she happens to also be, coincidentally, the great-granddaughter of Leon Trotsky, the revolutionary who was killed in Mexico. So she comes from Mexico. And when I first heard her, I heard her had a Spanish accent. So I said, I have a little Spanish. I started talking to her. I wanted to know from her where the name Trotsky came from. She didn't even know. His name was Bronstein. But that's a whole other thing. But she was the head of the Institute of Drug Abuse. And here she's saying now in this 2007 conference, we're discussing the commonalities in the brain's reward mechanism related to compulsive eating as well as drug use. So the Yale Food Addiction Scale, very simple. It's all in English. It's on the web, on the internet. Just download it. All the questions and how you scale it, and it's very valid scale, and is borrowed from the substance abuse disorder and obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's very reliable. And this is interesting. An article says the Arab version. This was the University of in Egypt, Zagazig University. I like that, Zagazig. You might have a football team, Zagazig. Sounds good. Anyways, I'm losing it, folks. The abstract was translated. Now, the reason that's the important thing, because I found out that the Yale's index has been translated into German, French, Arabic, Persian, Turkish, Italian, Chinese, and Spanish. You see this little kid here with the flag? It says, Ein Be'ivri. There is no Hebrew translation. Someone who's good in both languages can do this maybe in 2 afternoons, 2 evenings, do the translation, and you have a scale that you can begin to do research in Israel, make a whole career for yourself. And then someday, if I'm still kicking, I can watch you doing a presentation on the Yale eventual scale with Israeli populations. I really suggest someone pick this up. Take a look at the Yale food addiction scale. Okay, Yale food addiction scale. Oh, now I want to talk about some of the new medications. Ozempic. There was a song once. Oh, 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 it's magic. I can't really sing too well with that, but it was like, oh, 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 it's magic. And one day during a football game on the United States on my internet, I'm seeing a song being sung like this. Oh, 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 Ozempic. Oh, 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 Ozempic. What an ad. Advertising is going wild in America with Ozempic. They even have advertisements, wonderful advertisements with guys that look the best looking doctors you ever want to see. A handsome guy. He must be a doctor because of the white coat and the stethoscope. But he says, hurry up, supplies are low. Get a complimentary consultation before it's all gone. Hurry, 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 fast. Lose weight fast. Here's another doctor. Now I know she's a doctor because she has a stethoscope. Same thing. Supplies are low. Get a okay? And these advertisements are going all over the United States. Another doctor. There are a lot of attractive doctors in Kissimmee, Florida. Supplies are getting low. It's interesting. This woman is not only a doctor, but she's a sports addict. Look how thin she's gotten. She's not a doctor in this ad, but the supplies are click here for free consultation. And here again, she's now selling a different weight loss drug. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because what's going on today with this weight loss drug is big, big, big business. By 2028, they expect this to be a $27 billion business. You can see and it's not that colorful or clear, but you can see how these different drugs are just going up and up and up and up. Okay? And you remember Oxycontin? It was advertised as a non-addictive slow-release opiate painkiller. It was the most addictive painkiller that ever came out, and it's causing this huge heroin addiction problem in the United States and overdoses. They were just sued. I think they had $1 billion lawsuit, and the doctors got sued too that did the research. I think they got $1 million fine. No, $700,000, but they made $1 million. So it's very big business. This was the first death reported in England, North Lancashire. She also had other medical problems, but she died from. Now, I will tell you this. I had a client who happened to be a recovered heroin addict, years of heroin abstinence, but he had a weight problem. He was a very successful crane operator in New York. He's working on 40, 60, 70th floor with these big cranes. He made millions. And he just had a weight problem now. So he went and he got Ozempic while I was working with him. And he was using it, but he wasn't losing weight because he wasn't exercising and he wasn't dieting. He just shooting this Ozempic. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, the same thing was going on. And then I got a call that he was found dead at his computer. He was a really lovable guy, and I'm still very hurt about this and upset, but I didn't realize at that point this was going to kill him. Now they're trying to sell these this is what Ozempic is, and the other one, for alcohol use, because that's big business. And they get research that they can submit to the FDA and get approval. This research did something about people that took the drug and didn't take the drug and were hospitalized with injuries or without injuries. Just crazy stuff. Now, I want to tell you how I had my own experience with this. In 1992 in Israel, Dr. Andre Weissman, a Brazilian ER specialist, started doing a rapid detox. What he did, he later called it accelerated neuroregulation. He took an addict, and instead of having him go through a week of detox and pain and diarrhea and headache and flu symptoms, he simply put him under anesthesia for 12 hours, pumped in a substance called naloxone. And when the person woke up, he was clean. Then he gave him a drug to prevent him from getting high. Well, this was a big hit in the 90s. Everyone I knew, I was doing, they called it hazrika, the injection. They didn't understand what was happening to them. One guy said to me, they changed my blood. And then that's how I started to read up about it. And the fellow that invented, when someone comes to that hospital and they think he had an overdose, they don't have time to take a blood test. But if they take naloxone and scrape his hand with it, and he gets goose pimples, in other words, he's starting to get a detox, symptoms of detoxification, they can know right away. So there was a doctor in New York who I did visit named Richard Resnick at Mount Sinai. They call this Resnick's flush. He would start giving them the naloxone, and then over several days, he would treat the symptoms. But this doctor in Israel had this idea, let's anesthetize him, put him under anesthesia, put him out for 12 hours, and treat him. And that's what he did tremendous money. He had tremendous $5,000 for a one-night procedure. I wound up with another group of doctors that wanted aftercare. And I had at one point during the 90s and the early 2000s, I had the largest outpatient clinic for people that did this rapid detox. It's called naloxone. They use it also as Narcan. It saves lives today. It prevents the person from going into an opioid overdose. Now, this is another drug called naltrexone. It's not naloxone. And what this does, this prevents the person from having cravings because it's an opioid blockage. And after the injection with naloxone, they gave the patients the pills. And I would say to them, you guys, this is keeping you from using. Because if you go use, you won't get high. And some people actually overdosed. They couldn't get high, but they kept injecting heroin. It works. It will stop you from having a euphoric reaction to the drug. Opioids. But they found out that if you could get it approved by the FDA to treat alcoholism, wow, you can make millions. Well, you know, when I was in Atlanta, the salespeople came to take us out for dinner to explain to us how this treats alcoholism. And I said to them, listen, I worked with addicts who were on this medication. They were drinking. They were drinking, lots of them were drinking. And I would tell them, listen, you have a blockage now. Now you have to learn to stay away from alcohol and stay away from drugs. But most of them didn't have a problem with alcohol. He said to me, yeah, I know, but we in order to get it approved by the FDA, he told me this, we have an alcohol study. 4 doctors showed that naltrexone prevented alcohol relapse, which to me was just a lot of crap. And they got it approved, and then they got it approved for narcotics. And of course now they have a monthly shot, $1,000 for slow release naltrexone. I'm getting very nervous. I'm trying to speed up and get through this because I have a lot to go. Now we're talking about online treatment. Today, everyone has Wi-Fi. And people can come to your sessions in any situation they want to. These are some of the advantages. Today, kids are growing up online. I don't know if this is true, but I found this kind of cute. Okay. There are many advantages of internet. Many, I went on online in 2011 when I was in the United States. And when I came back, I started doing groups online. But I said to the hospitals, I said, listen, why don't you have aftercare groups? Keep them in support and, you know, minimal fee, but keep and grow the alumni. We don't have insurance. I said, well, you get a good lawyer. If they sue us and we lose, we'll have to close. We can't afford a lawsuit. All right, so I couldn't get any of the hospitals or treatment centers to do this. When I came back to Israel in 2011, the head of the anti-drug authority said, I want that. I want that for our patients. I said, well, what if they sue you? This is the Israeli reaction. Let them sue us, so they should sue us. Sheyitba'u otanu. The Americans, oh no, they might sue us. Wonderful difference. And we had the first groups online for recovery. And it's wonderful for professionals, single parents. They don't have time to get in the car and travel. And you have the weather. And some people have physical challenges. And so the weather, there was an ice storm in Atlanta, Georgia, 2 days, everything was closed down. The hospital was closed. You couldn't drive. There were no NA meetings going on. I had meetings online. Also, another thing, it allows for anonymity, a lower cost for the patient. I don't have any office rents or any expenses except my internet. So I can utilize my time. I also can get a lot of people who know me as a specialist in trauma and addiction, and they can come from all over. The other thing is, if I'm living in Maine and I have a gambling problem, where can I go? In Maine, there's nobody a specialist to treat. I want to go to a guy in Peoria, Illinois. So if I can go to him on the internet, I'm getting the best man in the United States with gambling treatment. The problem is now is the lawyers got involved. They want you to be licensed in the state, but they're making deals now to get around it. They're package deals, so you can get license renewal and stuff and different. It's pretty good, but that's one of the major advantages. The disadvantages, they were much larger when we started out, because like for example, you need to understand the use of earphones and microphone. You don't. Today, everyone was Zoom. And when I would go to conference, I would predict, I said, if you don't go online, you're going to be irrelevant. And, talking about, there's nothing like face-to-face. The research contradicts that. Research says it's as effective. But they didn't want to have anything to do with it. I said, you're not going to. Along came the COVID, and everybody was online. I didn't expect that. That was the catalyst. Now I'll tell you something else. Not only is it going to be Zoom, wait till virtual reality comes in. I've done that. It's very, very expensive, but I could put a virtual reality mask on, and a teenager can put a virtual reality mask on. We can meet on the moon, or we can meet in an office. We can meet at the beach. But I did this once. I sat with a person who was in a different part of the hotel, and I actually felt I was in the same room with him. But the technology was $200,000, so I thought I better wait a week or two. So I'm telling you right now, this is going to be, the internet connections are fantastic today. I started, it was just, I remember when I started out, one woman, she had lag. I said, well, can you sit close to your router? She said, no. I said, why not? She said, it's at my neighbor's house. She's using her neighbor's router. The beginning was unbelievable. Now it's with the Zoom, it's easy. And when virtual reality comes in, stay with it. Try this out. You're going to get used to it. The patients like it better than we do. See, these are the kids that they have the technology down at 100%. I'm going to go a little faster now. Unexpected problems when you're working online. I haven't had this, but this could happen to you. This did happen to me in the middle of a group. Windows started shutting down on me. I didn't know how to stop it. I know how to do that now, but what happened was I figured, all right, I'll shut down. I'll come back in 2-3 minutes. 147 updates, 1%, 2%. I'm sitting there for about 10-15 minutes. So that could happen. But it happens in any profession, unexpected disturbances, problems. Now, this is what I'm talking about predicting. This was a 1999 prediction. That's how naive people were about what we're going to be having. They said, we're going to have fax machines. I don't have a fax machine anymore. I have word processors, answering machines, voicemail machines. That's gone. And this was being predicted. The test administration scoring has come real, if that's true. Telephone, email, and chat rooms. They predicted this. Well, I'm predicting more advances in technology, so stay with this. Okay, this was the first 3 steps of the program. We can discuss why certain people use. We can make a lot of money talking about why. I think it was Frederick Perls, the Gestalt therapist, said, if you go into the why, you go into elephant shit. He said, go into the what. what are you doing and how do we stop that? How do we change it? And I'll give you an example, because I worked this program for 48 years in a couple of days. But I also was able to overcome a fear of flying. I did everything. I went to a therapist, psychotherapist. He drove me crazy with these Freudian things, and I didn't get anything from it. I was still afraid to fly. So I took up a pilot's course in Danbury, Connecticut. That didn't work. What worked was taking a lot of alcohol and a lot of drugs. I'd go to sleep on a plane. I'd wake up a little hungover, but I'd get there without too much fear. So one day I tried this. I took the same program I used for addiction and tried it with my powerlessness, with my phobia. And phobias are very resistant to treatment. I said, I'm powerless. And that's no problem. I did everything. And my lives were unmanageable. 3 times I took a boat to Europe. In fact, I came to Israel the first time on an Espresso Livorno car ferry from Greece. Then I had to go to step 2. Believe a power greater than myself could do what? Restore us to sanity. Because I know the phobic thoughts are insane, but I still fear them. I buy them. So I need to get into some kind of something to return myself to sanity. And that's when I made a decision to turn my life at that moment over to the care of my higher power, as I understand God. You take me to Maine from Tennessee on 3 flights. If I'm going to die, it's okay. I'm going to relax. And I did it. I was able to fly. I fly now all the time. So I also have a friend, Rivka Edry in New York. She wrote a book called Trauma and Transformation, 12-Step Guides. The reason I put that up here is these steps work for anxiety. You know, if you get the person, spirituality is what the answer is here. Modern psychology hasn't come to deal with, we have all kinds of programs for trauma. And I've been through some myself. But what really works is these 12 steps, the first 3 steps. When you say, I can't, it's driving me crazy. I have to do something about it. What can you do? Return yourself to sanity. That's the message. Your fear of water, of electricity, of dogs, of snakes, of spiders. It's insane. You know it's insane, but so you got to return yourself to sanity. You're powerless and you have no choice. You have to turn your life and the will over to God, as you understand. Now, God can be a GOD, a group of drunks. Okay? It can also be a good, orderly direction, which is the program. So that's why I suggest you be open to this trauma and transformation in 12 steps, especially with addiction and food addiction. These are some of the support groups that now are available for food and eating disorders. Now, I did this to show, I'm going to go through it quickly, how the 3 steps work. The plane that fell in the Hudson River, okay? US Airways, everyone saved. Amazing. Miracles on the Hudson, they call it. Now, here comes the plane. It's on its way down. And I decided at that point that everyone on that plane must admit their lives are becoming unmanageable. They're losing their lives, and they're powerless. They just got to brace. It's all over, folks. Going to die. So what happened? They came to believe in something to restore them to sanity, something to help them deal with going down, something to have them deal with the fear of death. They found things to do. God, if you exist and you get me off this plane, I promise I'll go to church and I'll give tithes and I'll do everything. So he felt he had to deal with God. And he was an atheist. Everybody found ways to deal with it. And that's where they all made a decision. They had no choice but to turn their lives over to God as they understood him, each person. When they got down, we're sitting with our heads down, he said, I'm buckled up tight, and you just hear them over and over and over. They're praying. That's how step 1, 2, 3 works. God bless you all. Thank God for Sully, and thank God for the team. These were the youngest survivors. Thank you and thank God. Thrilled to be alive. Now, this is what's going on in England with the new weight drugs I talked about. They're going to try and put them into the National Health Service so that by 2028, I think it is, in 12 years now, everyone will receive the drugs from the National Health service, according to be eligible. But they're talking about so 250,000 people will benefit in the first 3 years. Okay, this is big business, these drugs. And I would say, so be careful. Think about what the pharmaceutical companies are doing, what they did with OxyContin and what they're doing now. And there was something just came out the last week or two that when they get off Ozempic or the other drugs, when they get off them, their weight comes right back on. So they don't know what's going to be the long-term effects of these drugs are going to be. Now, naltrexone, the opiate pill, you have to have a liver test every 6 months because it can damage the liver. So what happens if you're on naltrexone for 5 years? What's going to happen if you use these Ozempic to keep your weight down? And people are having difficult feelings and physical results to taking these drugs. So I tell you what does work, in my opinion, the 12-step program. It started in 1937. 2 addicts, a doctor, 2 alcoholics, which is an addict, a doctor and a businessman, Dr. Bob Smith and Bill W. And they helped each other. And through the 12-step program and the support from one another, it grew to, I'll give you an example in Israel. When I first got into recovery, 1987, there were 2 groups, one in Tel Aviv and one in Haifa. And they only met twice a week, okay? Today, there is an NA meeting, 2 or 3 in Tel Aviv, 2 or 3 in Haifa, 2 or 3 in Jerusalem, and in every town, there's a NA meeting tonight. Acre, Aker, Nitivot, Eilat, Kriyat Shmona, Tiberias. Every place you can think of in Israel has an NA meeting tonight. Hey, this is my little buddy who causes more trouble. And when I work online, people have to know I have this little critter because he's a problem. You have to give him Ritalin. Okay. He sits on my lap through most of my sessions. Okay, so what we're talking about is a program that's proven itself. OA, by the way, is one of the best developed programs in the country because the women, mostly women, who went to OA were able to translate all the information from the United States and England, everything, because they're pretty educated. They didn't get arrested for eating Crembo while driving. But the people that get to jail, they lost education. They don't have the ability to translate as much as the people that didn't get arrested for food addiction. They have social problems and sexual problems and marital problems and self-concept problems. It's interesting. Rabbi Abraham Trotzky, who's a psychiatrist and an Orthodox rabbi, said that the addict doesn't love himself or herself. And he did that by talking about a nurse that would take so many pills. He said, look at the garbage you put into yourself. If you loved yourself, you wouldn't do that. Now, I use this, I took this from Trotsky. I use this in when I do lectures to groups of addicts, large group. I said, how many people here have used heroin intravenously and also have a dog? Crazy. It's usually women for some reason. 2 or 3 women raised their hand. I said, all right, assuming you had all the drugs you want, no problem with the money, would you give your dog an opiate injection? No, of course not. Ma pitam. No. Why not? I love my dog. I rest my case. You love your dog, but you look at your arms. They're all messed up by track because you're shooting yourself. Father Joseph Martin, another religious genius in the field of addiction, an icon. When I first met him, he said to me, Arthur, let me love you till you love yourself. I thought, oh my God, these priests. Slap me and I'll pray for you. You slap me, I'm going to slap you back. That's where I'm coming from. But anyways, over the years, I understood what he was saying. The addict does not love himself or herself. The feelings of something lacking in the reward deficiency makes him or her feel perpetually dissatisfied, no matter what they do. And this is where the program takes care of that, the 12-step programs. returns them to sanity. In Israel, it's the only group you go to. In AA in the States, you go to a group, say, hi, my name is Arthur, I'm an alcoholic. Everyone goes, hi, Arthur. Also, in NA meetings in the States, hi, Arthur. I went to a group once in Argentina. I said, se llamo Arturo, soy adicto. And everyone yells, hola, Arturo. But not in Israel. If you say, my name is Arthur, they all yell, Ohavim otcha, we love you. They're trying to say, we'll love you until you love yourself, like Father Martin said, and Rabbi Trotzky. So I'm encouraging you to be careful of this medication coming out. If some people, it's better than if they really are gross, morbidly overweight, and they're very sick, all right, it's worth taking a chance. But Hollywood's pushing this, trying to drop 2 or 3 pounds, 5 pounds, 5 kilos. That's not what it's for. Anyhow, these 12-step programs work. So I want to just say one other thing that came about. There was a study done in Israel just recently, very fascinating. They said that if, let's say a woman walks into a doctor and she has rheumatoid arthritis in her shoulder, and she's also overweight. So the doctor will say, diagnosis, rheumatoid arthritis in your shoulder. And he'll say to her, you also have to lose weight. Duh. Thanks for telling me, Doc. I didn't know that. Everyone who's overweight knows they need to lose weight, so why tell them? So what they do now, they found out that if you say to a person, you have rheumatoid arthritis and morbid obesity and overweight, you're classifying it as a disease. Not just saying it's a willful thing, go and lose weight. You can't. You could lose. If I could figure out the diet, I'd be a multimillionaire. You know how much the diet industry makes? The addicts, the food addicts I work with call it the yo-yo diet. So this is wonderful news. They're finding this out, that if you there's an association between recording a diagnosis of overweight, obesity, and the patient achieving significant weight loss. In other words, you're taking the responsibility off them. For me, that was one of the most beautiful things. See, because I was no dope. I know I was using too much chemicals and drinking too much, but I figured the reason, because I made Aliyah from America, and I have to deal with the army and this and that, always in Hebrew, and my marriage and the 3 kids. I had 3 kids. Not that I did much with them, but I had every reason in the world to understand it. But I knew I had to stop. So I went to a meeting, and the guy said to me, you have a disease. I said, what are you, stupid, man? I'm an athlete. Why don't you tell me I have a disease? And they explained to me, keep coming back, you understand. Addiction is a disease. Alcoholism is a disease. And over the years, I've understood it more and more and more. But they made me understand that what I did, the consequences of my using, although they were pretty bad at times, were not my fault. I was powerless. If you take cocaine and alcohol, you're going to do something crazy too. But the difference is if you're driving, smoking a joint, you get in big trouble. But if you're drinking Diet Cola, nothing. If you're eating a pizza, nothing. Okay. Gambling in some places is legal. But in Israel, you have underground gambling. You get caught, they get busted, they go to jail. So what I'm saying is, we're talking about an addiction with food addiction. And I want to caution you about the drugs. Use your own judgment. You'll be reading and seeing. And when you're trying to treat people who are suffering from eating addiction, don't say, stop purging. They have to. Stop dieting. One woman came in to me. She just got out of a hospital for eating disorder, and she cooperated with them so she could go back out and diet again. And she came to me. She looked like a pencil. I said, how you doing? She said, not good. I said, what's the matter? I ate too much today. Okay, what else? I ate too many calories today. I said, okay, what else? Well, I got ishmanti, I got fat. I said, okay, aside from the calories and the food and you get fat, how you feeling? She said, oh, wonderful, ala kefa. I looked at her, I said, bullshit. Boom. Because that's not what her problem is. Her problem is that she's not dealing with the feelings. And that's where we come in as therapists. get them to stop using and to realize that they have to begin to return themselves to sanity. They have to begin to love themselves and feel, gratitude for what they do have, not what they don't have. And I can get down on myself, oh, gee, I can't run a marathon. I can't, well, I can do this. And I have a lovable little dog. Look at what we have, not what we don't have. It says in the Tanakh somewhere, a truly wealthy man, or ethics of the father, a truly wealthy man is satisfied with his lot. And that's what this program's about. Okay, there are two prayers, one in English and one in Hebrew. The reason I give the Hebrew, because I learned to pray. I could go through the Shemona Esrei like a champ. I didn't know what I was saying, but I now can understand the Hebrew. But this prayer is part of the recovery movement. And it's a wonderful thing I'm going to leave you with. I use it, let's say, I hear somebody's passed away. First thing I say is, Baruch Dayan Emet. Okay, then I say, God grant me strength, except that I can't change. Calm down. You can't change the person's passed away. Courage to change what I can. I have the courage to go to their home tonight, sit Shiva, and talk about things that may or may not be helpful. And wisdom to know the difference. I'm driving to an interview in Hartford, Connecticut. It's 1:45. I got a 1 o'clock interview. Boom. Turnpike 95 shut down completely. It's like a parking lot. I go, oh no, I'm getting all upset. I said, stop. God grant me strength, except I can't change. No, I can't stop. Now, courage, wisdom. I can do an Israeli and drive on the side of the road and pass all the traffic. No, that's not too bright. I just have to wait it out and be serene and look at the people in other cars, listening to music. It helps me in everything I do. It's a wonderful prayer. And it's also in Hebrew. Eli ten bi shalva. Help me with my anger. One day, anyways, I can easily punch somebody if I get really, really mad. That's not a good thing to do. So I just stopped myself. I said, stop, calm me down. Eli ten bi shalva. Almost listen up my can. I can write down his driver's license, his license plate, and take him to court, whatever. But it helps me with my feelings. And it helps me accept life on life's terms. And that's what returns us to sanity. And that's what this is all about. So, how does this work here? Stop share. I don't know why Kathy's name's up there. I should be the one. I wonder if I stop this, if I lose. No, I won't lose you. I don't know, I'm not there. Speaker, let me try that. Gallery. Here I am. Anyways, I don't know how it works. It works. And I had the serenity prayer ready to say, God grant me serenity. I can't do this because the internet just blew. Or, I see all the people, and I'm getting feedback and they can't hear me. And I don't know why they can't hear me. I'm talking. And God grant me serenity, accept it. Work it out. It helps you. So even if you're not an addict, look into this. And it's a great way to work with our clients, to help them understand that their addictions and their food addiction is not lack of self-will, self-control. You can't, control yourself. Do you need that other sandwich? Yes, I do. Do you need that other drink? Yes, I do. I love it at the end when they all get up and they say, well, bottoms up. One for the road. That's a great statement, one for the road. Why do they do it? Because they have to do it. They will find a reason to do it. That's the way this disease is called denial. Addiction is denial. It's not a river in Egypt. Denial is not a river in Egypt. Denial is addiction. Because that's what it is. No, I can stop whenever I want. As soon as I get out of debt, I'll stop gambling. Yeah, that's what you think. Gambling's not about money. It's about getting that rush, feeling great. I played once, more than a couple times, I played blackjack in the casino, and I'm James Bond. When I'm doing that, I'm James Bond. So I understand the feelings involved with gambling. So that's about all I want to say today. Thank you very much. That made my day. Someone likes my sense of humor. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope we help get something out of it, and I hope you can continue to do the best you can with the people you work with. We're doing God's work, really. More power to you. Goodbye.